witnessed change time and time again, and though it is seemingly a natural process, change itself does not occur without reason and push. Historically speaking, that push has originated from those esteemed leaders that we are taught about and we remember today. And those historical leaders are celebrated now. In their time, they were called radicals, extremists, and even anarchists. Nonetheless, many of these individuals are commemorated after their deaths as revolutionaries. We celebrate them now because we reap the benefits of their sacrifices. And yet, there are always those in history who cannot shake their reputation as radical despite doing so much. And a perfect example includes women's suffrage leader Alice Paul. If we go back to the origins of the fight for women's suffrage in America, the first leaders that emerged were Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. They went on to found NAWSA, the National American Women's Suffrage Association, which Alice Paul would join. And yet she was immediately unhappy with their methods. Because they did most of their advocacy through publishing their writing, their work, though it was valuable, it was still quiet. And Alice Paul, who was educated from multiple prestigious organizations, including Oxford, where she met her right-hand woman Lucy Burns, she understood the power of taking action and the press. And so she needed something big. After finally gaining approval from NAWSA leaders, Paul and Burns went on to organize the largest suffragist parade of all time in Washington, D.C. And this was strategically placed the day before Wilson's inauguration in 1913. 8,000 women would march with banners and floats down Pennsylvania Avenue while 500,000 spectators would watch. However, the march took an unexpected turn within its first hour. The National Park Service wrote, "All around Paul, men cursed at, shoved, pushed, slapped, hooted, and jeered the marchers, while the police generally did nothing to stop it." However, as a result of the parade turning into a riot, the women marching in the parade were depicted as the victims in this situation. So Alice Paul had accomplished what she wanted. She'd gotten into the papers, she'd gotten into the heads of the people, and most importantly, she had gotten into the head of the incoming president. In fact, for 8 years, it was an epic David and Goliath type struggle between Wilson and Paul over the very principles that define a democracy. He learned very quickly that she would not be ignored. However, NAWSA's leaders were furious over the casualties as well as fundraising issues related to the march. And just as Burns and Paul were about to be kicked out, they left NAWSA for their own reasons. They wanted more than just an amendment. They wanted rights in the workplace, rights within marriage, and equality for all. And NAWSA thought that this was impossible to fight for all at once. So Paul and Burns, however, were not alone in their sentiments. The group of suffragists that agreed with them, they would all withdraw, and they formed the National Women's Party, the NWP, which would be led by Paul and Burns. So Alice Paul and Lucy Burns would claim their spot in history through their protest methods of picketing and hunger strikes. They began with picketing the White House, and these silent sentinels would stand in front of the White House and hold signs quoting the foundational documents of the United States and demand those same rights for women. An example includes, "Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God," and this is Wilson's own words in the context of World War I. It was ironic that U.S. soldiers were fighting for democracy abroad, while we were actively denying it to half of the population at home. The picketing went on, but when Congress had officially declared war, the public deemed it to be uncourteous to be picketing a wartime president. And as a result, the women were forcefully arrested by the police on the charges of obstructing traffic. Hundreds were arrested. All of them refused to pay the fine, as that would mean that they had in fact committed a crime while they were actually within their constitutional rights. They were all incarcerated. Eventually, Paul was as well and was soon followed by Burns, and that was when the infamous Night of Terror would take place. Lucy Burns, along with 32 other suffragists, endured a night of brutal beatings and had their hands shackled to the top of the door and had stood there for days. The response from the public was largely unsympathetic, saying that the National Women's Party had injured the cause of women throughout the country by their silly conduct. And yet they all remained unbreakable. Paul won the approval of the public, however, only when she was forcefully fed after initiating a hunger strike, and she was the first American suffragist to ever employ this tactic. In an article, she tells reporters that she was tied to a chair by her knees and throat and arms, and a tube the size of her third finger was inserted into her stomach and was very painful. Many suffragists followed her lead. The harsh treatment of prisoners became its own story as these suffragists went on tour and told their stories of their conditions that they faced during their imprisonment. And in the end, it was a war effort that was, though detrimental to the picketing, beneficial to the movement. The National Women's Party gained Wilson's support after women became essential to the war effort. And for Paul, her fight did not end there. After the passage of the 19th Amendment, Paul, alongside the National Women's Party, devoted their life to fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment. And though it has not yet come into fruition, their work guaranteed women a better world in which they may seek more for themselves. The historical situation in which her life took place allowed her to become a leader that would take charge in a way that no other woman in her time had done. And perhaps it is for that reason that cannot shake the name of radical that follows her around. Or maybe it's because of her resilience and her character, which never once broke. She devoted her life for the benefit of generations of women that would come, and her legacy shines as a beacon of courage, reminding us that even in the face of adversity, one voice is enough to ignite revolution. Thank you.